My Lords, question for short debate. Development of the proposed Hillsborough law. Lord Alton of Liverpool.
My Lords, the Prime Minister opened last week's House of Commons debate on the second reading of the Public Office Accountability Law, the Hillsborough law, with what he described as, and I quote, a simple acknowledgement, long overdue, that the British state failed the families and victims of Hillsborough at an almost inhuman level. Echoing Barbara May's description of burning injustices, he powerfully described the closing of ranks, institutional lies, cover-ups, smears and betrayal by the very people who should have been protecting families, victims who became trapped in a cycle of profound grief and wicked vilification, with the public purse used to bankroll misconduct and malfeasance and to camouflage the truth. Truth, expeditious justice and consequences. They are the three themes I want to address today. Hansard records that 36 years ago, as a Liverpool Member of Parliament, I sent correspondence to the government of the day questioning the suitability of Hillsborough for the April the 15th, 1989 semi-final, enclosing a statement from the Chief Executive of Liverpool Football Club who said this. There was no way I could support the choice of Hillsborough this year with the same ticket allocation applying. But of course, my Lords, the match was played with disastrous consequences. Despite repeated suggestions that the fans had brought the calamity on themselves, Lord Justice Taylor accurately identified the role of South Yorkshire Police and criticised their attempts to shift responsibility from themselves to the spectators. 4 days after the disaster, I wrote to Sir Cecil Clothier, then the chairman of the Police Complaints Authority, enclosing a first-hand account from a constituent. I asked him to open an independent inquiry into attempts by the police spokesman to blame the fans for their own deaths, which I said was, quote, part of a smokescreen of propaganda aimed at diverting attention from the truth. Despite repeated requests that he investigate the conduct of the police, he declined to do so. Years later, I was shown a letter from Sir Cecil to the Chief Constable of South Yorkshire, saying he'd done his best to, his word, deflect my complaint. Sir Cecil signs the letter spike, a word journalists use when an editor has decided to withhold a story from publication. With the truth being spiked, victims had to watch a system circle its wagons around its own. In 2012, the independent Hillsborough panel found 164 statements had been altered significantly, 116 amended to remove content that was unfavourable to the police. It was only when the original 1990 to 91 inquest verdicts of accidental death were rerun using the obligations of the 1998 Human Rights Act and Article 2 of the ECHR that verdicts of unlawful killing were finally reached. 27 years had now passed as the truth gradually began to emerge. The 2016 jury vindicated the fans and established gross negligence, defects at the stadium, errors in the safety certification, and much more besides. My Lords, instead of consequences for those at fault, we've seen early retirements and enhanced pensions. Parliament will want to be convinced that the Hillsborough law will tip the balance away from the behemoth against whom the small battalions are pitted. We must finally lay to rest what the 2017 independent report into Hillsborough, chaired by Bishop James Jones, described in its title as the patronising disposition of unaccountable power. 5 years after the publication of that report, and now 28 years after the disaster, I protested that there still hadn't been a government response to that report's recommendations that A, the duty of candour, B, equality of arms at inquest, C, the appointment of an independent public advocate, and D, a charter for families bereaved through public tragedy should be enacted. Following this up in 2023, I participated in a meeting here of an all-party group looking at public accountability, and where we discussed a range of public tragedies, including Primados, atomic test victims, infected blood, Hillsborough. Other examples might have included Windrush, Chinook, Grenfell, Manchester Arena, COVID, grooming gangs, and Horizon. After that 2023 meeting, I suggested to Ian Byrne, Member of Parliament, who'd been a young spectator at Hillsborough, that he should write to the Joint Committee on Human Rights, of which I was a member and which I now have the privilege to chair, and ask us to examine the Hillsborough law. We did. Our witnesses included Bishop Jones and Andy Burnham. The hearing led to a unanimous report in May 2024 calling for a Hillsborough law. And on March the 3rd, the government responded positively. It's indicative, my lords, that during our hearing, the Joint Committee was told that a Hillsborough law could have made a difference when inaccurate evidence was given to the late Lord Kerslake's inquiry in the aftermath of the Manchester Arena bombing. But in addition to the duty of candour, the new law must build on the admirable work begun in 2014 by the Noble Lord Wills and by Maria Eagle, Member of Parliament, in promoting a bill for an independent public advocate, which I strongly endorsed and which was established in 2024, a post held now by Cindy Butts. While the JCHR has not yet decided what its approach will be on the new bill, I hope it will consider seeking further information on whether she has adequate powers and resources to support victims of major incidents, to guide them through the obstacle course and to ensure a response from government. I'd like to hear the Minister's view about strengthening the role of the advocate and tell us why the government say that this might not be the right place in which to do it. Also about the creation of a national oversight mechanism to ensure that when recommendations are actually made, they are implemented. And the House, I think, will also want to hear about the practicalities of ensuring that victims of disasters, of state-related deaths, receive parity of legal representation during inquests and inquiries, about the resources that the government are going to set aside for this, and above all, how confident the Minister is that the new legal duty of candour on public authorities and officials will bring to an end the depressingly familiar pattern of cover-ups and concealment, where the penalties will be exemplary and adequate to punish outrageous conduct. In Baroness Levitt, who will steer the bill through this House, we have a Minister whose entire working life has revolved around justice, and she is particularly well placed to turn bitter experiences and unfulfilled promises into a workable reality. And I'm grateful to her for the constructive discussion that we had last week. 36 years ago, I visited the families of constituents who had loved ones, including teenage children, among the fatalities and the injured. Among those was Andrew Devine, who suffered life-changing injuries after being deprived of oxygen. His remarkable parents, Hilary and Stanley, lovingly cared for Andrew with exemplary humanity and courage. Andrew emerged from his coma in 1994. On his death in 2021, the coroner ruled that Andrew had been unlawfully killed, becoming the 97th Hillsborough victim. Let me conclude, my lords. Andrew's family are grateful to the Minister for agreeing to meet them privately, without media intrusion, to discuss their hope, which they've asked me to relay to the House, that there will be one enforceable code of conduct for all public officials with significant sanctions, including financial penalties for non-compliance. In the quest for truth, for expeditious justice and consequences, Andrew, his family, and all those who 36 years ago paid such a terrible price must now be our guiding light. I thank all noble lords who are taking part in the question today.